Hello, everyone. My name is Jiang-Xiazi Lin. I'm a postdoc from Brown University from Professor Leo Lee's lab. And I would like to thank the organizers for this wonderful workshop and thank for the invitation. So here my topic today is zero-field superconducting diode effect in small twist angle trilayer graphene. And you can find the related manuscript on this archive here. This is the outline of my talk. So first, I would like to introduce about the graphene moire systems, and especially the flavor polarization and the superconductivity in this system. And then I will briefly introduce about superconducting diode effect and discuss the possibility of finding this effect in this graphene moire system. And then I'll present our recent work on the small twist angle trilayer graphene and our finding of the zero-field superconducting diode effect, and then I'll give some brief discussion. So first, for the introduction, this is a lattice of the monolayer graphene. It has this honeycomb structure, and this is the hexagon brilliant zone of the monolayer graphene. And the low energy dispersion bands sit on this K and K prime point at the corner of this brilliant zone. And then when we add a second layer of graphene on top and twist it with a small angle theta with respect to the first layer, then we get this long range moire lattice, like this hexagon here. And so that this long range moire lattice gives us a folded mini brilliant zone here. The low energy also sits at the K and K prime point of this mini brilliant zone. And when this twist angle theta is at some certain value that we call magic angle, calculation shows that the energy band at these angles becomes very flat. For example, like this calculation here, the blue one is a flat band. You can see that the bandwidth is around 10 milli electron volt. And in this case, the band is very flat and the kinetic energy of the electrons is very small, nearly vanishing, as shown in this curve at this point. And in this case, the Coulomb potential energy, as these straight lines, actually dominates, and the system will show very strong interaction. And this strong interaction will give rise to an abundant and emergent phenomena. And the family of these moire graphene systems not only include twisted bilayer graphene, it also includes twisted trilayer graphene and much more. And all of these systems have flat band at the magic angle. And the reason is similar. And so in this system, there are two independent degrees of freedom, valley and spin. For valley, we'll have K and K prime valley. For spin, we'll have spin up and spin down. Because these degrees of freedom are independent, we'll have totally 4 degenerate flavors in like valley K and spin up, K down, K prime up, and K prime down. And therefore, in this system, when the flat band is fully filled, the density is corresponding to 4 electrons per moire unit cell area. As shown in this first measurement of magic angle twist bilayer graphene, here the black arrows are pointing at the insulating states when the flat band is fully filled, corresponding to 4 electrons and 4 holes per moire unit cell area. And within this flat band, because the electron interaction is very strong, the flavor symmetry of these 4 false flavors can be broken spontaneously. And this gives rise to extra insulating states at integer fillings of the moire unit cell. We call those correlated insulator states. As marked by these red arrows here, is at half filling of the flat band. And it turns out that these flavor broken bands actually have non-zero Chern number. And because K and K prime valley are related by time reversal, as you can see in this honeycomb here. So the Chern number for K and K prime valley are actually opposite values. Therefore, when the valley degeneracy is broken by the strong interaction, when we have a valley polarization, the total Chern number is non-zero in this case. And this non-zero Chern number can give rise to anomalous Hall effect. For example, in this system, here shows the resistance measured as a function of filling. This is the density, and the top axis is the filling factor of the Morey zone, Morey unit cell. So all these peaks here are insulating states. This is at a charge neutrality point, and these are the symmetry broken, flavor symmetry broken state, correlated insulators. And in this system, at half filling here we observe anomalous Hall effect as we tune the external magnetic field. And this shows the polarization of the valid degree of freedom. And another interesting emergent phenomenon in this twisted graphene system is the superconductivity, as discovered experimentally first at this 2018 paper. This shows the longitudinal resistance as a function of temperature and density. Here, the orange part shows the correlated insulator at half filling of the flat band, and the dark blue region here is a dome-shaped zero resistance range near the half filling. So the superconductivity in these systems are usually found near the half filling of the flat band, like this one, for example. Although the exact relation between the superconductivity and the correlated insulator is still under debate. And next, let's come back to the title of this workshop, Superconducting Diode Effect. So this effect comes from the non-reciprocal IV characteristic curve of the superconducting state. So for example, the left figure here is a reciprocal IV curve, and the right one here is a non-reciprocal one. As you can see that this asymmetry here shows that the positive and negative critical currents have different magnitude. And in this case, when you switch the current in a certain density in different directions, and forward direction and backward direction, you will get a superconducting state in one direction, but get a resistive state on the other direction. So this shows a superconducting diode. And this has a good potential for the application, for example, for low dissipation electronics. And theoretically, this superconducting diode effect requires the breaking of both inversion symmetry and time reversal symmetry. Here are some recent theoretical studies of this system. And in recent experiments of the superconducting diode effect, the required broken of the time of the inversion symmetry can be achieved, for example, here by using an ABC non-central symmetric stack, or by this non-central symmetric odd number of layers, because the inversion symmetry is broken in the lattice itself in this material. And the required time reversal symmetry broken can be achieved by either applying an external magnetic field, like this case, or by tuning the weak link in the Josephson junction into a ferromagnetic state, like in this example. So let's look back at our magic angle twisted graphene system. As have been discussed, this system can host a flavor symmetry breaking, like the valid polarization. This is showing the time reversal symmetry broken, and also it can host superconducting states. Although these two phenomena have not been observed simultaneously, but this brings us to a very important question. Can we find intrinsic zero field superconducting diode effect in this magic angle twisted graphene? Well, but unfortunately, the answer is not likely. And the reason is that so far we haven't considered the valid degree of freedom of the group of pairs yet. And let's take a look. So in the magic angle graphene, due to spontaneous flavor symmetry breaking at half filling, where the superconducting is usually found, the valid degree of freedom is either fully polarized or fully balanced. And let's think about each case. So if the valley is fully polarized, it means there is only one valley left. For example, here, the K valley. In this case, the Cooper pair can only come from the same valley, and it will give you the intra-valley pairing. And in this case, the total momentum of the Cooper pair will be very large, will be non-zero, will be very large. And so the Cooper pair is not stable in this case, and that superconductivity is unlikely to survive. And for the other case, where the valley is completely balanced, in this case, the Cooper pair can come from both valleys, and we can have inter-valley pairing. So the Cooper pair momentum can be small and can be zero. So superconducting is stable, and we can see superconductivity in this case. But the time reversal symmetry is preserved, which is not satisfied by the requirement of the superconducting diode effect. So in this case, we will not be able to see diode effect. So therefore, for either case, it's not likely to see zero field superconducting diode effect in magic angle twisted graphene. And indeed, here I'll show our experiment. Indeed, in this experiment, we have a magic angle twisted trilayer graphene. And as the resistance as a function of filling here, we can see that at integer fillings, there are the correlated insulating states corresponding to the broken of flavor symmetry. And we also see superconductivity at the hole doping side of this system. And in the superconductivity state in this sample at zero field, we take a close look at the IV curve. And here we do not find any asymmetry in the critical currents. And also, to study more closely, we can tune the current at a magnitude around the critical current, and we can tune it in positive and negative directions. But like when we tune the current, we can see that the resistance does not change for the different directions. And like for a small current, the blue one here, the state is at superconducting states at both sides of the current. And when we increase the current amplitude a little bit, and for example, in the green one here, the system is resistive for both sides. So this is like a total, we can see it's completely absence of the diode effect. And so now let's move on to our main result. Here, we investigate a twisted trilayer graphene sample. The structure is as shown as here. We have 3 layers of graphene, and the first layer and the third layer are twisted with a small angle with regard to the middle layer. And this is a photo of our device. We etch it into a Hall bar shape so that we can measure the in-plane, longitudinal, and Hall resistance. And we perform the measurements in our dilution fridge in the lab, which gives us a 20 millikelvin base temperature. And we use the standard low frequency lock-in technique to take the transport measurement. And also I'd like to mention that we use dry transfer to build this device, which means the interface is totally clean. And also the twist, although the sample is long, you can see here and the whole bar is long, we have a lot of contact, but the twist angle is very homogeneous along the whole range of the device. And so for something special for our system is that, so for the magic angle for the twist trilayer graphene is around 1.5 degree, but for our device, it's actually smaller than the magic angle, it's around 1.2 degrees. And calculation shows that for the small angle, the band is actually less flat. So here, starting from magic angle and decreases twist angle to 1.2 degrees, you can see that the red flat band here, actually the bandwidth increases. This means that the correlation strength in the small twist angle regime is actually weaker than the magic angle regime. And indeed, as expected, we found that the flavor symmetry breaking vanishes for the small twist angle regime. So here shows the chemical potential measurements we perform with a double layer structure, where we place another layer of graphene to sense the chemical potential of the twist layers. And so here is the twist layer is around magic angle, and here is at a small angle. So you can see that here the sawtooth pattern at integer field lengths indicates a strong electron interaction and the symmetry breaking at the integer field lengths. But here this effect is vanished for the small twist angle. And in this small twist angle sample, we can see that actually superconductivity persists. So this shows a collection of data of our sample of the TC as a function of twist angle. We can see that at the small twist angle, we also have superconductivity. And here is the resistance measured as a field length of the small angle sample from high temperature down to the base temperature. And we can see there are two superconducting domed region and electron and hole doping site. And here from the RT curve, we can see that the transition is sharp and the TC is around 1 Kelvin. And strikingly, in the superconducting phase of this small twist angle sample, we find zero field superconducting diode effect. As shown here, we can see that the positive critical current is much smaller than the negative critical current. And then we can demonstrate a superconducting diode effect better by tuning the currents between positive and negative 20 nanoamp. And we can switch the state between the resistive about 25 kilo ohm to zero resistance. This is a very stable switching of the superconducting diode. And I have to emphasize that this is measured at the absence of external field. So this zero field non-reciprocity tells us that the time reversal symmetry in this system is spontaneously broken. And here I would like to discuss a bit on this spontaneously broken time reversal symmetry. This shows that the system has some kind of magnetic order. And one very natural candidate for this magnetic order is a partially polarized valley degree of freedom. As drawn in this schematic here, you can see that the Fermi surface for one valley is bigger than the one for the other valley. And here we are at a small twist angle. And in this small twist angle regime, as we shown before, we don't see any flavor symmetry breaking. And this is resulting from the weaker strength of correlation. And this moderate amount of correlation leads to the valley degeneracy, but do not fully polarize it. So this valley imbalance actually can explain the broken of inversion symmetry and also time reversal symmetry, which is required for the observation of zero field superconducting diode effect. And now, we show that this time reversal symmetry breaking order can be controlled by applying an out-of-plane magnetic field. Here at positive 25 millitesla, which means the field is applied upwards towards the plane. And also here shows the negative 25 millitesla, which means the field is applied downwards. And we can see that the polarity of superconducting diode is reversed in these two cases. And then when we decrease the magnetic field from positive and negative 25 millitesla to 0 Tesla, here we can see that the polarity of the diode remains the same as in positive and negative 25 millitesla. The result is that the diode polarity at zero field actually depends on the history of the applied out-of-plane magnetic field. And so this tells us that the time reversal symmetry breaking order can couple to the applied out-of-plane magnetic field. And this is actually consistent with our explanation of the valley imbalance picture. And after coming back from a positive magnetic field, here we look at the density dependence or the doping dependence of this diode effect. Here shows the blue and red curve are taken at negative and positive 20 nanoamp DC bias, and as a function, the resistance as a function of filling. We can see here that the difference in these two curves tells you the non-reciprocity. And we can see that the non-reciprocity persists through the entire range of the superconducting dome here and here. And this can tell us that this effect is unlikely from a junction that accidentally formed by an inhomogeneous twist angle. And it's more likely an intrinsic bulk property. And also, we find that the diode effect is the strongest at large doping. Here, we take a look at the IV curve taken at large electron and hole doping. We can see that in this case, the superconducting diode effect is so strong that both critical currents have moved to the same direction, which means that like at zero bias, we actually have a finite resistance, and the system only becomes zero resisting when we apply a small finite DC bias. This demonstrates a very extremely strong, robust superconducting diode effect. And finally, let's revisit and compare with the magic angle case. So here, for the magic angle twisted trilayer graphene, we see this sawtooth pattern corresponding to a flavor symmetry breaking spontaneously and at integer fillings of the Murray unit cell. And in the superconductivity in this system, we did not find any zero-field superconducting diode effect. And this is consistent with our discussion that like either very unpolarized or very fully polarized will not be able to support zero-field superconducting diode. And in this small twist angle sample, we did not see any obvious flavor symmetry breaking at zero field. And this means that value imbalance is possible for this system. And in the superconducting phase in this system, we saw zero-field superconducting diode effect. And this is consistent with our proposed picture. And to summarize, we observed zero-field superconducting diode effect in our small twist angle trilayer graphene. And we see that this effect is intrinsic and is coming from a junction-free bulk material. When I say bulk, I mean 2D. And yes, and this effect is also very robust, as we can see. And this effect shows that the inversion and time reversal symmetries are both spontaneously broken. And also we demonstrate an external magnetic field controllability or trainability of this effect. And we provide some explanation using a value imbalance picture. This picture can meet the symmetry requirement for a zero-field superconducting diode effect. And it's nicely explaining the discrepancy between a magic angle and a small twist angle regime, like why we did not see zero-field superconducting diode effect for a magic angle device, but we saw it in a small twist angle device. So in the future, more studies are actually needed, like for explaining this very interesting system. So for example, we would like to explore twist angle dependence and the role of spinel-bill coupling. So at last, I would like to thank our collaborators. This work is done under the supervision of Professor Leo Li, and the device fabrication and measurement is performed by me and Jean, and the theoretical analysis is provided by Matthias and Harley. And also we got the crystal materials from the Japan group and from the Columbia group. And that's all of my talk. Thank you very much for your attention. And I will welcome any questions.